Welcome to The Edge, a podcast from the Bluntness, where we unpack real-world experiences and expertise of seasoned and successful cannabis professionals. I'm your host, Harrison Wise, and today's guest is Sloane Barbour, founder and CEO of Engin Sciences. Hi, Sloane. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Harrison. Great to be here.
Cool. Let's start, at the top. Let's give our listeners some context. Let's start by giving a little background on yourself and Engin.
Sure. Well, I've, I entered the cannabis industry in 2019 after about a 12 or 13 year career in recruiting and HR technology in the broader technology industry. And I kind of got into the notion of cannabis or got interested in the cannabis industry when I attended Hall of Flowers in Santa Rosa in 2019. And I had never thought about a career in cannabis, but once I started to kind of go in that direction, I realized it was very exciting. I went to that event and met a lot of incredible people and happened to bump into an old friend of mine, a guy named Dave Belsky, who's the founder and CEO of a company called Flower Hire, which does executive search and sort of six-figure recruiting for cannabis companies since 2017. And he was, said the company was doing great. We went out to dinner at Hall of Flowers. I said, look, I'm kind of a free agent. I left the tech industry, took a few months off. This seems cool. And he said, we'd love to partner up and have you join. I joined as a chief revenue officer in 2019. And that was my first job in the industry. And then shortly after that, because we were working with a lot of C-level folks, boards, VPs of HR, and we would place other directors and VPs into those companies. Mm-hmm. And they would usually come to us and say, hey, we got like hundreds or thousands of hourly workers to hire all over the country, drivers, bud tenders, extraction, cultivation, right? And then a lot of just more general sort of frontline roles. And there was no solution that was really working for them at scale, that was affordable, that was accessible, and that allowed them to just sort of take all of that hourly hiring and high volume hiring and put it in one place. And so we got inspired and we decided we wanted to launch a tech platform, and that was how Engin was born.
What are the unique aspects of sort of recruiting in cannabis versus like traditional recruiting from like an Indeed.com? So to your point about having a big demand for hourly type workers, why have such a specialization? Why do we have such a need for that specialization in cannabis recruiting versus broadly just recruiting people who are qualified?
Well, recruiting people who are qualified and getting them through an interview process is a lot easier said than done. That process takes companies hundreds or thousands of hours. I mean, tens of thousands of hours, just depending on how large they are. And most of our customers right now are enterprise, if you will, cannabis companies with thousands of employees. And so
MSOs typically.
MSOs, single state operators, brands, cultivation houses, etc. But that is primarily, our customer base. Although we have a small business product that we're launching here in April, that will be, I think, really, really great for smaller companies who have sort of a smaller budget, because that really is what's driving a lot of this is efficiency. Mm-hmm. And the reason you need specialized support in an industry like cannabis is because both sides don't really know or have the data that they need to make a good decision. One, there's no Bureau of Labor Statistics for the cannabis industry because it's federally illegal. So things like pay rate, payrolls, number of workers, all of that is kind of unknown. So we're building a platform to create some standardization for that, which of course, if you're Indeed, like you said, or LinkedIn or ZipRecruiter, you're not going to be building all of this custom cannabis industry related stuff because you serve, millions of customers across the globe. And in fact, we partner with ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn, and Indeed to get exposure for our customers' jobs. So we still use all of the existing infrastructure. We're not reinventing the wheel, but there is this notion that sort of in between the sort of job advertising and job posting, and then to the point of apply, between that sort of point of apply and the point of hire, you need support, right? You need to, one, get the right person to apply, make sure that they're qualified, get them into a system that you can easily engage them, get them set up for an interview, get them through the interview, get them onboarded. We really help customers optimize that flow. And we can do that by integrating with their existing systems and applicant tracking systems like we do for enterprise customers, or we can do that through a very simple, easy to use dashboard for our small and mid-sized businesses that just want an all-in-one package. And so you basically kill 3 birds with 1 stone. Don't have to worry about setting up accounts with Indeed and everyone else. We handle it. Don't have to worry about, where you're going to collect your applicants. We can give you that system. And then also just kind of don't have to wonder what to pay people or what the market rates are. We give you all that data so that you can basically build out your budget, and your hiring plan, which is something that these companies are kind of flying blind on and spending a lot of time and money that could be saved and put back into the business.
Yeah, staying on that thread, what are sort of maybe the top 3 things that, like with New York, for example, coming online now and more licenses being allocated. What are the top 3 things that business owners or HR people within those organizations should have top of mind in order to, effectively scale?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, this is sort of what we give you like in a box, right, with the Engin platform. But the 3 things that I would say are probably most critical is 1, how many people do I actually need to efficiently hit the revenue goals that I would like to hit? And that's cultivation, manufacturing, retail, right? Those are the 3, and then there's logistics and delivery. Right. But really, those are the 3 areas, right? That what are your COGS and your really personnel costs, which is the largest expense for most companies, and especially for cannabis companies, is the people that are doing the work. And if you're building out, XYZ square foot cultivation facility, we can help map how many people you're going to need, and then we can give you competitive basically rates or pay rates of what you can pay people or should pay people, what other customers are paying people or companies in cannabis and other industries are paying people, how much it costs to acquire enough applicants so you can make qualified hires. So all that can be basically plugged into a spreadsheet through our platform that will allow you to say, okay, this is how much it's really going to cost over the next 3 to 5 years to build this facility out, because I can expect a certain amount of churn in my employee base. There's going to be a training period. There's going to be a credentialing period. There's going to need to be some auditing on the diversity metrics and certain zip codes that I need to hire from based on my municipal relationships, which is, sort of different by state and municipality.
Right.
All of these things, when you start a cannabis company, are usually pretty far down the list day one, because you're like, I got to get a building, right? So, but usually what we see is sort of that first 3 months, companies are kind of shooting from the hip. And then months sort of 3 to 6, they're realizing that there's a better way. And then usually at that point in an emerging market like New York, we're talking to and working with some of the early retail stores like Housing Works and Union Square,
right.
About, okay, cool, let's sort of try to make this process a lot more efficient, and then that's what we've done for customers in a dozen other states. So it really is just having the visibility into what to expect. I think is a really big weight off of an executive and leadership team's shoulders, that they can then actually have some baseline data to kind of make the rest of their assumptions around.
In terms of like minimum wage and comparables, I mean, New York is a city unto itself, as you well know, and where is there a comparison to kind of what the going rate is these days in New York?
Yeah, I mean, I actually have
higher cost of living. I mean, you know what I'm getting at. I mean, New York is just a beast unto itself.
Yeah, I mean, so basically, there's 2 things to consider, 2 data points to consider when you're looking at a pay rate, right? Sort of more than that, but really there's 2 key ones. One is what kind of caliber or quality of applicant do I want to receive to begin with? Because if you pay on the higher end of the ranges that we provide, you will get more better applicants because people have a limit to what jobs they'll apply to in terms of pay rate.
Right.
So if you're at $18 to $22 an hour versus $15 to $18 an hour, you're going to get better people applying at day one. And then what does that mean downstream of that, $2 an hour difference? Well, we want to be able to illustrate that paying someone competitively both upfront and then giving them competitive raises based on milestones is a mechanism by which you can retain and grow your team. And retention in cannabis and most hourly industries, but especially in cannabis, is very bad. It's like 60 to 70% of people leave within the first 6 months. So most companies or the industry at large will basically replace the entire industry minimally every year. So if there's about 500,000 people working in cannabis today, which is probably roughly correct, the industry is going to have to hire 500,000 people just to stay afloat. And then if they need to grow, they got to hire all those additional people. So that is very expensive for the industry. It's not great for your culture. And it's really detrimental to your sales and your employer brand, right? Because you have people that are usually less experienced interacting with your customers. So what we try to empower companies with is the fact that this $1.50 an hour today, amortized over the next 6 to 9 months, if you can increase your retention by 50%, the ROI on that is going to be X or is going to be Y, because the average order value is higher. The overall customer experience and net NPS and CSAT scores are going to be higher. And the quality of your workforce overall is going to be better. So there's going to be more mutual accountability and a better culture within your organization. And those are investments that are worth making early in, because it's very difficult to reverse that when you become known as a place that people don't want to work.
Right.
It's kind of a death spiral. And really, at the end of the day, what is the difference between a cannabis company 10 years from now and a cannabis company down the street? Their brand and their people. That's it. It's a commodity product. And sure, there's craft. And I as a consumer myself, I respect all the different types of cannabis that's grown. But at scale, it's a commodity product. So you have a brand, you have distribution, and you have your people. And the people really are at the tip of that spear because they create the brand and the distribution. So, without the people, you have nothing. So we really want to center the industry on that particular element, because if we have great people working in cannabis, the industry will be great.
Agreed. And I think you might have mentioned it, but like training is important to that as well, right? So I think a lot of licensees or applicants may not realize the degree to which they need to also have a training program in place, especially for bud tenders, right? Especially the frontline employee. What is something that's maybe often overlooked by those folks? I think sometimes maybe training is sometimes an afterthought.
I would say our expertise is really in building out and developing the talent marketplace and the employer brand and making all those connections and empowering you to make great hires. And then we work with really strong partners like GF Institute. GF Institute is also known as Green Flower, one of the earliest education platforms in the space, been around for 7 or 8 years. They have tens of thousands of already credentialed candidates. And in our platform, when you go to post a job and hire, you can actually connect directly with these people that have credentials, and you'll view their validated credential within the platform. So there's a lot of benefit, and we believe we're leaning heavily into this notion that people who have experience and credentials, whether it was online, a community college, a university, those people should be seen by these potential employers, because that is a way to kickstart a bit of a foundation by which to build further training and to sort of have a few people in your organization that have the experience of working in a retail facility in the regulated cannabis industry before, have experience going through a community college course for 12 weeks, and can come in and say, hey, here's the 2 or 3 high impact training areas that are going to actually increase your average order value and your customer lifetime value. Because, and your NPS and CSAT scores, those are going to be the things that, like, if you're measuring those regularly, like, you're going to be able to consistently get sales even when the market becomes more competitive. Because the first 18 months, it's kind of no rhyme or reason. But as we've seen in other states, Colorado, Washington, Oregon, California, that sort of anything goes, shoot from the hip does not last forever. And if you don't have your ducks in a row, you're gonna fail. It's a very difficult business to be successful in. So investing in something like that early on is a huge importance to the long-term success of a business, because it creates a foundation for which everyone has a certain standard they're held to, and that is the standard of your training program.
That's great. And what's your thoughts on whether it's better to hire for skill or personality or even attitude? There's different schools of thought around that. Where do you stand on that debate?
So I think I know there is validated research to support that someone's natural personality strengths, whether you have a strength for customer service because of a high degree of extroversion, or whether you have a strength for details. Those are things that we actually offer to job seekers when they're doing our exploration of the industry, to be able to take a quiz and see how they would fit and what their strengths are. And that's, I think, very cool. And it also just sort of helpful to kind of understand, where do I start? Most people have never worked in this industry. Or if they have, they've worked in the legacy community, which we want to, and are fully embracing, and have partners that deliver applicant job listings right to those legacy partners, so that we can get exposure and bring those folks into, regulated career opportunities if they would like to do that. And I think what you find is, there's a lot of different job types in a dispensary. There's a bud tender, there's a shift leader, there's a manager, there's an inventory specialist, there's warehouse, sort of logistics, vault, and most people will only apply to a bud tender job because it's just kind of what they know. They might not even know one of these other roles exists. So what we're trying to help both sides understand is, hey, if you have inventory management experience already, and you have, a high attention to detail as sort of a natural part of your personality, you should probably look at this job. You can apply to a bud tender job, but this is actually probably a better fit. And what we've seen in all industries, but also especially in cannabis, is that the reason why employees maybe aren't successful is they're miscast into the wrong role or the wrong company. And we believe everyone has an opportunity and should be able to find a fit in the cannabis industry, because there's so much job creation happening. But making those connections really simple for both sides, and then empowering people to feel great about how to highlight those strengths during an interview, is a really important part of what we're building with our Careers in Cannabis network.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. You mentioned earlier, DE&I a little bit. What are some of your best practices or recommendations for how cannabis brands could best tackle, sort of inequity in the workplace, whether it's gender or race? Like, how do they overcome that, homogenous workplace environment?
Yeah, well, the diversity metrics presently in the legal cannabis industry are not good. There was a recent report, and it's predominantly white men, as sort of most industries are, and this industry has a responsibility to reverse that, because of the people that were disproportionately harmed by the century-long war on cannabis, which was predominantly disadvantaged Black and brown communities around the country. And so New York is, I think, leading in terms of which I'm in New York and have been involved in this community since 2019, and I think New York is doing great work to sort of help chart a path for what could be a really vibrant and diverse industry. But the regulations, of course, matter, but really it comes down to where the rubber hits the road is during the job listing creation phase. That's sort of step one. It's like, okay, we need to hire a bud tender. So what we do is we have profiles and job descriptions built that we've tested for bias and certain keywords and SEO that you can just plug right into, and in 3 clicks get a job listed that is very clear to the job seeker. So that's step one, because job listings themselves can include bias. Step 2 is the distribution partners that we've built over the last 2 years. So we work with the likes of the Justice Foundation, and their team focuses on legacy to legal and justice involved individuals. They have a large community, and they support them through helping them get licenses and jobs. They run justusjobs.com, JUSTUS jobs.com, and we power that platform with our technology. So when people apply on that job board.
Mhm.
They come into our customers' jobs and they're tagged from that source so that a hiring manager knows this is a validated partner that specifically and exclusively works with this community. And you can see people from that source, and they're likely to be more, in the category of an equity applicant, that you're going to want to make sure you have that initial touch point. Because if you don't have the funnel for those folks, a lot of companies will kind of make excuses. I didn't get any of those applicants. Well, we want to eliminate those excuses. So we work with Justice Foundation, 40 Tons, and several other partners that we'll be announcing soon to really make sure that we can those folks in those communities get access to the job listings in the first place. And then finally, you need to have a process that is as straightforward and unbiased as possible to try to get people through an interview quickly, target and reach out to the right candidates for the right jobs at the right time, and then also have the data to track that. So we give our customers aggregated diversity data. You can't hire based on, you can't screen for that because that's illegal, but you can see at the end of the month, okay, I got 1,000 applicants. What is the diversity by region, by job type? And we can benchmark those against the industry and against your own internal goals. So now what you don't measure, you can't manage. So now that you have a pipeline, an unbiased job description, a pipeline of qualified, diverse applicants, and the measurement tools to see how your pipeline and your overall company, the hires you've made, compare to the broader industry, you can start to make an impact and you can start to affect that. And then you can start to utilize that, to your advantage, because your company will likely perform better, because that's what the data shows from a diverse companies perform better than their peers. And two, you're going to attract more customers because customers want to shop with a company that supports the communities that have been disadvantaged by cannabis, because people know what's going on, right? The culture understands that and is very much for that. So that can be highlighted through your employer brand communications on careers in cannabis and directly to your network. So all of this becomes a sort of similar to retention, employer brand. All of this is part of the same, I guess, infrastructure that ultimately, if companies do this well, they will succeed with sales revenue and marketplace growth, because people respect their brand and they have great workers and everyone loves going into their stores because the budtenders are awesome and they represent the community that they want to see represented.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're trying to help that's a long tail sort of, multi-year thing to really make sure happens, but we're very much building the infrastructure for that today.
And do you find that job fairs are an effective strategy in that capacity?
Yes. Yeah. Job fairs are a very effective strategy. And 40 Tons, the partner I mentioned earlier,
Mm-hmm.
Social equity group out of LA, incredible story, that several folks there spent time in prison for cannabis, and were let out and started this brand, and also felt like, hey, a big way to make an impact is helping people get jobs in this industry. And they were right. And so they throw these incredible career fairs, and they're doing one here in New York at some point this spring and summer, and we help power those with our technology and just make it easy for in the moment you just want to talk to people and connect. Job seekers snap a QR code on your booth, they're matched with you in the system. When you go back to your desk, all your people you met are right there. You can start sending them messages and connecting with them right away. So really it's about both making those connections and having that sort of cultural impact of a career fair, but also then how do you follow up on all of that, right? Which usually is where things end up getting lost in the shuffle. So we try to really make sure that follow-up process happens and is really efficient.
Cool. In New York in particular, where are the opportunities for hiring? Where are you seeing the most growth right now? Upstate, downstate, New York City versus I think you're up north. There's a lot to this state. It's very big and very vast. So where are you seeing a lot of the sort of activity or action right now?
Yeah, so we're seeing, early growth in the dispensaries and retail in New York with, organizations like Housing Works and Union Square Travel Agency. Those are well capitalized nonprofits that are able to, build out and get launched and everything. And that's great because we need to get these retail stores open. So that's where you're going to see some of the first sort of real kind of hiring dozens of people. There, of course, are also farms throughout all of New York. That this first season, I think it was so reactionary because it was kind of late in the game. People need to get flowers. Like, it was very skeleton crews, but now we're talking to organizations about sort of leveling up, bringing in more people for this spring. So I think this spring, like really like April, May, like you're going to see a lot of really good job creation. And then the predominant growth in New York, I think, is really going to happen in 24. Mm-hmm. The rollout is happening, but there's 300 card retail licenses that were just announced will be given out in April, which is fantastic. A little bit of a tough time to raise capital, and the New York market, the way the regs are written, it kind of excludes certain capital providers, historical capital providers to the space. So I do think there's going to be some slowness in New York, really kind of rapidly getting the job creation they want to see. The goal is 60 to 80,000 jobs, which I think will happen. There's 85,000 in California, so I think 60 to 80 in New York is very much reasonable. That's a lot of jobs. Oh yeah. That's a ton, and there'll be a lot of those in New York City. I think you'll see most of that growth happen Q4 23 and then throughout 2024.
We see some news, and I know we've covered it in the Bluntness a few times, about certain retail dispensary workers unionizing. So in your perspective, unions, good, bad, indifferent? Do you have a point of view on that?
I don't have a strong point of view because I'm not knowledgeable enough on it, although I have spoke with, and we continue to speak with, several sort of people involved with the unions. I definitely think that labor deserves and needs a voice, especially early on in an industry. And I think unions serve that purpose. And I think most, if not all, of the cards are required to unionize in New York. So I think that it will be determined how that ends up working out. But I think there's a lot of pros involved in that. I also think that companies themselves need to take ownership over their employer brand and their team, and invest in that in partnership with a union. If a union's involved, or if a union's not involved, invest in that sort of alongside other industry partners to build out transparent sort of pay bands, as an example, which is something that unions will help do because they sort of force that transparency. But if companies want to create an industry that is well respected and that people want to work in, and that attracts a high caliber worker and overall workforce, I think it's everyone's responsibility to treat the people that work in this industry well, and to give them, a fair and competitive wage, and to give them career growth, which I think more than anything else in this industry is kind of what makes it unique, in the sense that if you're a bud tender at Housing Works in December of 2022, 6 months, 12 months from now, like, you are quite literally the most experienced bud tender in the state of New York, right? That knows the products, knows you should be running a dispensary, or you should be, moving up in your career, if that's what you want, because you're not competing with other people. Right now, yes, people in Massachusetts or California or other places who've had regulated experience, sure, but like in New York, like, you're kind of the person. That's obviously not the case if you work for Starbucks, right? There's 10 million other Starbucks baristas that you kind of have similar experience to. So I do think there's really strong advantages to getting in early and to creating career pathing for the industry. And I think unions will play a huge role in that, but I'm not going to not do that as a participant in the industry myself. And we feel it's really important to also build that infrastructure to support the talent communities as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that opinion. Let's see. What are you most optimistic about the future of the cannabis industry from your perspective?
I'm most optimistic overall about the notion that we can look historically at some of our decisions and the reasons why they were made, particularly in the 1960s, with the Controlled Substances Act and some of the oppression that went on after that, where this plant was kind of used as a cudgel against, disenfranchised communities. And we can sort of, at this point in our evolution, be able to look back and say that was not good. that was really unfair, and we need to fix that. And in fact, by decriminalizing on a federal level and then legalizing state by state, if that's the choice the state wants to make, you can create a safe framework whereby the plant can be free, as it should be. People still can understand and know the benefits and the drawbacks of cannabis consumption. And I am a realist and believe that there needs to be significantly more research into the pros and cons of the plant, because we need to know if we're going to proliferate this throughout our country. But I'm optimistic that experience will hopefully unite people around this notion that, hey, this propaganda that I was fed for decades actually wasn't true, and I can change my mind, and I can open my mind to a different alternative, and an alternative that's much more humane. And I think by having that happen, we can also, I think, inspire people to look harder at other parts of our society that maybe should be rethought, from sort of a foundational level. And so in that sense, cannabis is kind of an industry of the future. I would put it alongside crypto or climate, in the sense that, like, it's a movement in addition to an economic engine. And when those two things collide, I think it can be very messy, as we've seen in certain ways. But I also think it can be a really strong proof point that people can come together around, sort of a shared belief that this needs to happen, and do it in a way that everyone can kind of have access, and there's an equitable sort of result from all of this economic activity that's going to be created.
Awesome. Taking it back full circle, bringing it back to Engin. We were talking earlier before we started recording about some good news that you have to share, and that's going to help set you up for future growth. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I just want to first thank my team at Engin, and my co-founder Valerie, who's our CTO and has been with me since day one in 2020, the end of 2020, when we launched the company, sort of officially, and then in Q2 of 21 when we launched our beta product with our test customers, and without her we wouldn't be here. And then the rest of my team, who I won't name specifically because I don't want to leave anyone out, has either been from the very beginning, or people that we've hired in the last few weeks, is pretty incredible. And I just wanted to say thank you to the Engin team for getting us to this place where I can announce that we've raised a Series Seed round led by Gotham Green Partners, which is one of the investors in the cannabis industry, and has incredible connection and knowledge from being in the industry as long as they have been, and to be their first basically seed stage investment they've ever made is I think pretty cool. And we're really excited about that partnership. And then we brought several leaders from the HR tech community and the broader tech community onto our board of directors. Peter Flint, who's a retired VC out of Polaris, and then a guy named Joe Essenfeld, who is the founder of Jive, which is an HR tech company sold to iSIM. So we've really built out an incredible sort of leadership team and investor partnership. And then we are onboarding a new hire named Justin Spencer, who's spent the last 15 years working for 5 years at Indeed, and then almost 10 years at ZipRecruiter, from when they were basically a Series A company all the way through IPO. And he's going to join us to really take us to the next stage of delivering value at scale to customers in the cannabis industry and to job seekers looking to get a job in the cannabis industry. So we're really excited about 2023. I can tell you raising money in the end of 2022 was a bit challenging. Glad I got it done before SVB fiasco happened, which
no kidding, yeah.
Just happened this week. I think cannabis, we're in a position from my perspective, when I speak to my team, they're sort of battle hardened already. I mean, it hasn't been easy for the 3 years we've been going at it, right? And it
wasn't easy before.
And it wasn't easy
before that either, exactly.
And I don't think it's going to be easy.
Yeah.
I think it's actually going to get harder. But there's such a energy with both my team and the partners we work with and our customers. And, despite all these challenges, people want this industry to be great. And they want to have the modern tools and technology and support and insight that a manufacturing company or a coffee company or a brewery would be able to snap their fingers and buy 3 SaaS platforms and they could run their whole business and it's all customized for them and they have incredible support and knowledge and industry. That hasn't been the case, in a lot of segments of cannabis, specifically hiring. And so we're just excited to bring this product to market and to partner with great companies and help this industry grow in a sustainable, equitable, and profitable way.
Awesome. Well, Sloane, thank you for sharing today, and congrats on all your success so far and on the latest round of funding. I'm sure you're going to put it to the capital to good use and continue to grow and scale. So I wish you the best of luck on that journey, and thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, Harrison. It's great to be here. Appreciate it.
Wow.